Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast.
Oh, you just turned up there.
I did. I love this jam. Doesn't matter if I have to listen to it every week. It's Tuesday. Oh, no, it's Thursday. Sorry. Thursday, June 27th. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon right across from me. As always.
What's up?
We are at the end of June. The last episode of June.
Holy cow. Dude, I'm going to get so lit
means
for the 4th of July.
We're a month away from real fantasy drafts happening. That's the greatest sound.
That is pretty dope.
It's pretty awesome. We're excited to bring you... yeah, you're right. Well, I mean, I think one of our episodes released on July 4th.
Oh, really?
The 4th of July is a Thursday. Next Thursday, guys. The 4th of July.
Dude, on that show, we got to just eat a bunch of hot dogs and just scream into the mic.
Just scream into the mic. Right behind my apartment,
okay.
there is a guy that shoots off fireworks every single night. And they're not just these crappy little fireworks. They're
legit.
They're legit big ones. He just fires one off. I have all my windows open and I hear this bang. And I'm like,
wait,
it scares the crap out of me. It's at night. It's at 11 o'clock at night. It just literally me and my wife are in bed and we're just "Rah!"
Getting festive early.
Yeah, it's true. No, it's been happening for a month. It's either
he's testing out the stuff.
Either somebody's getting shot or
yeah. I mean, well,
or there's a firework. It sounds like a firework.
Let's hope it's a firework.
Anyway, yeah, next Thursday we're going to have a nice fun 4th of July show. But we are excited today to bring you our top 10 draft tips for 2019, 2020, and beyond. And we'll probably do this show every year to give it a little more oomph. Some new ideas that we come away with. Before we get into our question to start the show, be sure to go over to Twitter. Like us on Twitter at the FF Champs, on Instagram at the Fantasy Champions. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/the Fantasy Champions. Subscribe wherever you listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube. Click the bell, leave a review, share with your friends, all kinds of good stuff. We are growing steadily, but surely we are growing, and with your help, we can become the largest fantasy podcast on every platform. Large, lofty goals, but I'll roll with it.
Dude, you know what? I have large goals as well. Hopefully my bank account will one day reach the largest.
Not if you keep rolling up to McDonald's.
Dude, what you talking about, bro? That's how you going to stay rich. Dog, you got McDonald's, you got nice cheap meals, man. It's better than going out to eat some fancy places like Olive Garden, you know?
Fancy places.
And Chipotle and Chick-fil-A, man, those places are crazy.
I could just imagine a white gangster going, "Woman, I'm taking you to Olive Garden tonight."
Hey, what's up, girl? Yo, you like fancy places?
I'm taking you to Olive Garden.
Hey, I got a place just for you, all right? You, me, couple wines, and Olive Garden. Spaghetti
Get
on
that
me.
Breadsticks.
Hey, waiter. Hey, this is my girl.
Lord
okay,
knows,
I'm taking her on a date. Give her some breadsticks, you know?
Lord knows the only reason to go to Olive Garden is for the breadsticks, so that's...
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Let's get into our question to start the show for Thursday. What running back unit are you avoiding the most this year? Entire unit. I'll start.
Okay.
I'll start.
You're going to kill me because I thought of one immediately.
There was four. Would you want to start?
No, go ahead.
All right. So there was 4 units that I was specifically thinking about: Washington, Philly, Buffalo, and San Francisco.
Okay.
The one I think is the most disastrous of all of them, because Buffalo is pretty bad, but I didn't pick Buffalo. I won't talk about it. But Buffalo, I looked today, I was like, wow, yeah. I think it's the Washington Redskins.
Ooh,
they have Chris Thompson, who might not even make the team. We'll see what happens.
I think
Darius Geis, who was the guy that was supposed to be the man's last year.
Just 2 months ago, he was going in like the second round.
Yeah. And then you have Adrian Peterson, who's projected to be the number 1 back on the roster, who still wants to play in the NFL and do his thing. And now you got Bryce Love, a 4th-round pick running back. So they have a clustered backfield.
Yep.
There's a lot of different guys on it. You spend a 4th-round pick on a guy, Bryce Love's got to make the team. So he has to make the team. You got AP. You're not going to cut him. He had a good season last year. You still got some stuff left in the tank. And then you got your first, second. Was he a first or a 2nd-round draft pick, Darius Guice? I think he was a first. Maybe second, early second.
I'm not sure.
But you have Guice, who was your invested draft pick that got hurt, and you hope he comes out. And then you hope he comes out, works out, and pans out. And then you have your you have Chris Thompson, who's probably going to end up being cut with like 3 other guys at the bottom of the roster. They have like 8 running backs. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And so obviously not all of them are going to make it. They'll probably retain 4 running backs, but all 4 of them have a reasonable spot to get at least in the active unit. And for me, it's like I'm avoiding Chris Thompson. Obviously, probably completely undrafted, not even a guy you would even look at.
No.
Bryce Love, not even a guy that you would look at. So the 2 guys for me that it comes down to is AP, and there's going to be people who look at him and go, "Oh my God, that's a stash. He's going to be good again."
No, I'd stay far away from him.
And then Darius Guice, who is getting drafted far too early to even justify.
See, he's
a
the
draft
one
pick.
guy I would debate it. Like, I probably would.
You would think about it, but
Right.
you would wisely stay away, hopefully.
I probably wouldn't draft. Depends where he is.
But I'm staying away from that entire backfield because I don't see the opportunity. Unless AP gets hurt, for me, there's no opportunity. And so it's like, I just, the more I look at it, the more I was like, wow, this is just a mess. And I don't even know where to put Darius Guice on my rankings. I'm having a hard time with that because I'm like,
it is. Yeah,
I don't even want to draft him.
The Redskins situation, I think, is you kind of have to see like how it plays out and who kind of emerges. Because, I mean, there is a chance it could be Peterson or Darius Guice.
Right.
And Chris Thompson could be cut, but he could also be there like RB2, you know?
Right.
So I was very tempted to just piss you off and say Chicago Bears.
No.
Just stay away from the Bears running backs. I actually really don't
mind the Bears.
I don't mind the Bears, but I don't really want.
What was your team again?
What was it?
What was your team again?
I haven't said it yet.
You haven't said it yet?
No.
I thought you said it and I completely zonked on it.
You're too busy zoinking on Montgomery, the Bears team.
No,
Montgomery.
it's true.
So my team that I'm going to choose is the San Francisco 49ers. My lovers over there in San Fran. Only because of Jimmy Garoppolo, though. But so their running back situation, fantasy-wise, I think is a complete mess.
Crap show.
Overall, yeah.
Yep.
A straight-up garbage can. We have Tevin Coleman, who is probably going to be the starter. Don't want to draft him, especially where he's going right now. I think last time I checked, he was 7th or 8th round.
Yeah.
For a guy who may or may not be the RB1. Mm-hmm. You got Matt Breida, who was the RB1 last year. Jared McKinnon, who was supposed to be the RB1 last year. And they still got, was it Raheem Mostert? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Raheem Mostert.
Yeah. So you got those 4 guys. All of them are probably going to make the team.
Yeah.
Could you, I could see any one of those 4 guys, especially McKinnon, Breida, and Coleman, being the starter on this team.
I saw a report. I could say yes to that statement, by the way. Yeah, you could see any one of those guys. But I did see a report that said basically that Coleman is probably going to be the guy that gets, not that he's necessarily going to be the starter, but he's going to be the guy that gets the most opportunity and snaps in that running back field, and that they want to keep. They have 5 running backs. One's a fullback.
Oh, boy.
One's a fullback, and another one they use on special teams. So that means they have 6 running backs. I'm sorry. The 4 running backs that we just talked about, Raheem Mostert is one of the guys on special teams that they want to keep. So they're basically only going to have 2 running backs that they hold per game on the roster as an active guy. So that means that if they keep all of their running backs, either Matt Breida or Jerick McKinnon are going to be a healthy scratch.
Yeah.
And so that's what this reporter said, and I looked at it and I was like, oh my word. So basically it comes, you just paid Tevin Coleman, so it's not him. So it's going to come down to Breida, and it's going to come down to Jerick McKinnon. I was actually looking at this earlier today, and Jerick McKinnon has just been putrid.
Has he?
In the time that he has played on the field, he has not been.
Well,
his first year, he averaged 3.6 yards a carry. In his second year, he averaged 3.9 yards a carry. He's not an efficient running back. So unless something magical changes and he becomes more efficient.
Well, here's the problem, though. They paid him a lot of money.
Jerick McKinnon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They signed him last year with the intention of being the RB1 on the team.
The other problem is that Matt Breida didn't look that good when you realistically look at his numbers from last year, too. Everyone was like, oh, my gosh, he's amazing. But with the first 4 games of the season, he was good.
With Garoppolo, of course.
Yeah,
shout out my boy Jimmy G.
And then after that, he was just average.
Right.
So it's like he wasn't. I think if they're going to choose a guy, McKinnon will probably be the guy that they go with. I know they brought Coleman in to be the Coleman role in the Kyle Shanahan offense.
Yeah.
So he's the Coleman role of Dan Quinn's offense, which is Kyle Shanahan's offense. So technically he's playing his own role with San Fran. But at this point, with the injuries to Matt Breida and Jerick McKinnon being constant, like Coleman might end up being the starter, which
he probably will be.
That's a disaster, is what that is.
Yikes.
But it's a pretty nasty backfield. That's not. Like, I'm avoiding that one too.
Yeah. Well, actually, like if we're just talking football-wise, like non-fantasy, it's not.
Oh, yeah. No, that's a good backfield.
Yeah, fantasy-wise, it's like.
We're talking only fantasy.
Yes, we are a fantasy show.
Another some quiet notes. The Philadelphia Eagles is one. I really do like Miles Sanders, but I feel like Josh Adams is supposedly on the bubble, and I don't know who's the other guy that was with Josh Adams last year. What's the guy's name? It escapes me. I don't remember. It's not even worth remembering at this point.
I don't know.
But they have Miles Sanders and they have Jordan Howard, and so Miles Sanders being a rookie coming in, I don't think he can be effective on week 1. And Jordan Howard was so inefficient in what he was doing last year. It's just not worth even using a draft pick on him, because if he stays inefficient this year, he's going to get less snaps. That's guaranteed. If he gets less snaps, that doesn't mean he's going to be like everyone's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to draft Jordan Howard late and he's going to go back to being an RB1. No, he's not. He's going to get less snaps and he's still going to be inefficient.
Yeah.
So, like last year, he averaged 3.6 yards a carry. The year before that, he averaged 3.9. Like, he was bad. He just gets a crap ton of attempts. He had 270 touches last year. The year before, he had 290. Yeah. Like, good God, man.
Is he going to get the same amount of attempts playing Philly?
Right. He might hit 200 touches. But to me, it's like, even if he does do that, he'd be lucky to finish in the top 20. Lucky. So that's one of the backfield. And then the only one, like I said, I mentioned Buffalo. I just want to rattle off the show. Yeah, it's a crap show. I want to rattle off the players they have. So they brought in Frank Gore. They brought in TJ Yeldon. They have LaShawn McCoy. They have Devin Singletary, their 4th-round running back.
Oh, boy.
So they are loaded. They actually a lot of talented running backs, a lot of guys that, Frank Gore is old as crap, but TJ Yeldon's decent. LaShawn McCoy was good back in the day. He's kind of old and he's not good anymore. And then Devin Singletary is the young guy. So I think it'll work in Buffalo, but it's just for fantasy wise, it's a disaster. Yeah. So I would stay away from that backfield too. But it's interesting to see, especially as training camp comes along, how the depth charts are, and preseason too, but how the depth charts are going to work out and how the players are going to rank in the roster and how they're going to utilize them, because Frank Gore might not even make the team. Right now they have him as the second best. PlayerProfiler.com has him as the number 2 running back on the depth chart. He might not even make the team. So that him and TJ Yeldon, but I think if there's a guy on that roster that could take over, and this is a hot take, but take over LaShawn McCoy's job, it would probably be Yeldon, because he's young and he's been somewhat efficient with Jacksonville. And LaShawn McCoy was a garbage can last year. Like TJ Yeldon and LaShawn McCoy both started last year, especially when Fournette was out, and TJ Yeldon was way more efficient than LaShawn McCoy. So I just think it's the Buffalo's offense.
2 very different situations though last year too.
I think it's Buffalo's offense altogether. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure it's that. But anyway, let's move into our top 10 draft picks. Top 10.
Number 1.
This is why I need segment drops.
Number 2.
Because if I say if I
Christian McCaffrey.
It's why I need segment drops, because if I keep saying it, I'm going to screw it up. So Yeah, our top 10 draft picks.
Number 3, Jimmy Garoppolo.
Stop it. Top 10 draft pick. This is a rough show for me. This is a rough one.
Number 4, Drew Brees' hair.
Top 10 draft tips.
Ooh, there it is.
There it is. Let's get started with our top 10 draft tips. So I'll start with tier your players. This is an interesting one. We talked about it before on our first show, episode all together. Throwback all the way to February. So basically what you want to do is, and you can make your own rankings or you can choose to use somebody else's. A lot of the rankings that you get online usually come with tiers, but some draft rankings don't. What I would suggest is if you trust one source, don't use like 5 different sources. You can use the Fantasy Pros ECR, which is totally fine. And then you can use like one of your, like if you listen to the Fantasy Footballers podcast, you can totally use their UDK and do that. I'm not shouting out anyone. But or you can use ours someday when we release content and a website. It's going to happen. But anyway, so you can use whichever one you trust the most to break down your players. I like to rank my players personally and then tier my players personally because that gives me the most accurate depiction of what I want as a fantasy owner. So the players that I like are going to be ranked the way that I want them. They're going to be ranked basically based on what guy would take over what guy all the way down. So I already know what guy would take over what guy if it's my own personal rankings. Whereas if you go to the ECR, you might disagree with one and then go, well, I don't want this guy. The ECR says they want him, but it is what it is.
So you do that first.
Right. So you rank them first, and then what you want to do is you want to draw a line between the separating players. So what that means is if you see, for example, I have Ezekiel Elliott and Saquon Barkley in my tier 1 of running backs, and that's it. Tier 1 for me is guys that I think are going to finish as the number 1 running back in fantasy. Zeke and Saquon are the 2 guys that I think have the best chance of finishing as the number 1 running back. Okay. After that, I draw a line and I say, so those guys are in they're in their own level, they're in their own tier. Then the second tier starts, and you have guys like Kamara and Christian McCaffrey and Melvin Gordon and so on and so forth. So you basically find the separating gap between each section of players and then put them in tiers. So you say you have a tier 2 wide receiver and a tier 2 running back, and you're drafting. Obviously, if it's tier 2 in both categories, you're looking at it and you're going, okay, which is the highest ranked player in each tier?
Right.
If you're drafting and you get to the 3rd round, for example, and there was a massive run on wide receivers, so now you're all the way down to tier 4 on wide receivers, but there's still a tier 2 running back on the board, you take your tier 2 running back and you let everyone else continue on their run of wide receivers. So it kind of shows you. It gives you, what I like to do is print it out and cross out players as I go, so that I can look at the sheet of paper, I can see what's going on, I can see what tiered players that are left in each position, and then I can take that best player. Drafting with your tiers allows you to take the best possible, what you think at least is or the experts or whoever you follow, the best possible player available is for that particular situation. So for me, I like to use tiers. Drafting with tiers gives you like an unruly advantage against everyone else, especially when drafting. When Joe Schmo walks in with a sticky note and his notes for the entire draft on it saying, I'm going to get this player. You draft with tiers, you're going to sit there and there's going to be a guy in front of you. Guarantee it, there's going to be a guy in front of you and you're going to draft the guy he wanted, and that feeling feels so good.
Yeah,
it's like they're like, dang it, what was supposed to get that guy? And you're like,
and then
no, you were just prepared for
it.
Well,
that's the thing too, because if you do it by tiers and something like that happens, so let's say you're Joe Schmo and you did not do it by tier. Now you wanted let's just theoretically say my boy Christian McCaffrey. Let's say you wanted McCaffrey this whole time.
Yep.
Guy in front of you takes him. Now you're screwed because your whole plan was McCaffrey. Yep. You're drafting by tiers. You're like, okay, McCaffrey's off the board, but Kamara's still in this tier, and he's on the board here. So I can still go Kamara because to me, those guys are both the same as I've already done my research, and I can already see who's in what tier. So it does help you it makes you more prepared, and overall helps you succeed in fantasy drafts.
That's true. Give us number 2, boss.
All right, number 2. So for me, it's target your guys, but don't overvalue.
Boom.
All right, so here's what I mean by that. You love Jimmy Garoppolo. I know you do.
Oh, boy.
I love Jimmy Garoppolo too, but I'm not taking him.
Everyone's like, what are you talking about?
I'm talking to myself in a mirror right now. But I will not take him in the 5th or 6th round.
Yeah.
Because I know that's overvaluing him way too much. You have to realize to not go after, even though it's the guy you want, to not get him like 3 rounds early or 2 rounds early. I know you really want him on your team.
Yeah.
I know you really, really love AJ Green, bro. I know you really love Amari Cooper. I know you really love insert player here. Don't take him in the 2nd round. Don't draft Patrick Mahomes in the 1st round. Please don't.
Yeah.
You should still target your guys, though.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is like kind of like what you said when you ranking system, like you might have someone higher than regular ECR. So that might be like one of your guys, quote unquote, where you're like, oh, I really want this guy on my team, but I don't know if he'll be there. So you keep that in mind. You want him on your team. You target him, but don't overvalue him. Do not draft him way too early.
Yeah. That's so true. I think that I always bring this story up on this podcast because I try to drill it into my mind that I made this mistake so that I don't make it again. I started my draft last year, and a draft strategy in my draft strategy, it allows me to understand exactly what's going to happen in our personal draft, and then take guys and come up with backup plans for guys. So I kind of know what my team's going to look like before I even walk in the draft room. The problem with this is that if I don't properly scout guys, I end up drafting players over certain guys and not adjusting to what's actually happening in the draft room.
Right.
If a guy falls or if a guy is getting drafted too early. So I'll give you 2 examples from my draft last year where I made a mistake.
Okay.
The first one, which I think I talked about last week even, was the Christian McCaffrey, Jordan Howard gaffe. I drafted Jordan Howard because I liked Jordan Howard. I, at the time, planning my draft, did not expect Christian McCaffrey to be on the board. And when Christian McCaffrey fell to me, I was like, oh, I should probably draft Christian McCaffrey. And then I was like, I'm going to draft Jordan Howard. And then the second time was that I had already in my plan that I planned that I was going to get Carson Wentz in the 6th round last year. I was like, this is the guy I'm going to get 1 round early, just so nobody else gets him, just to be safe. Get my quarterback in the 6th round. That's why I never draft quarterbacks early ever again. And there was another guy that I was targeting and that I didn't think would be on the board at that point, and that was Joe Mixon. And he made it to my pick at 604. And had I drafted Joe Mixon, I probably would have had the best running back group in the entire league that would have dominated. Yeah. And imagine if I had drafted Zeke, Christian McCaffrey, and Joe Mixon all in the same draft.
Man, changes a lot of things.
Yeah, it changes a lot of things. So, but I was sitting there with all those guys on the board, and very feasible for me to get that team. And I drafted Carson Wentz and Jordan Howard over Christian McCaffrey and Joe Mixon. So that's never good. Just remember, there are guys you're gonna like. There are guys you're going to not like. Do not overvalue the guys you like, and don't devalue the guys you don't like. I think that's actually a good draft tip to go side with this.
Even if you don't like a guy, but he's falling in drafts, and the ADP's like, why? That doesn't really match.
Yeah.
You can always draft him and trade him too.
Right.
Always keep that in mind.
Yeah. I believe we talk about that tip.
Oh,
a little bit.
Foreshadowing.
Later. Yeah, foreshadowing. So let's move to number 3, using strength of schedule. A lot of guys don't do this. A lot of guys don't use home and road, and they don't use strength of schedule. And if you don't know what I mean by home and road, some guys play just better at home than they do on the road. Jared Goff is a great example.
Drew Brees.
Of that. Some people tie quarterbacks together. So if Jared Goff plays well at home but sucks on the road, you draft Jared Goff. And then, if there's another player that plays well in certain situations or they have matchups that coincide with that, you just get the other quarterback, and then it's basically 2 quarterbacks in one. You're just putting them together. So some people draft quarterbacks like that. Regardless, make sure you understand the strength of schedule. Now, don't just take last year's numbers, slap them on the freaking sheet of paper, and say, "Oh, these are the strength of schedule for last year." Understand, you also have to look at defense. You also have to look at the changes that people made. Like, is the Chiefs' defense better than it was last year? Yes, they added a cornerback, I believe. What's his name? I don't remember.
They also added a linebacker, too.
Yeah, they added a very good corner and linebacker. Their defense is now much improved. Are they going to be the same defense they were last year? Only time will tell. But you have to understand the improvements that were made on the defensive side of the ball. So a lot of the websites out there, like Fantasy Pros, really give you a good depiction of what the strength of schedule is based on the changes. So they'll give you a basic rank saying this guy's strength of schedule is this. So you can go on that website if you don't already pay for Fantasy Pros. This is not an advertisement, but you can do that. But anyway, so strength of schedule is something that I use when I draft, understanding that, like, hey, maybe this guy he's got a tough early start to the season. Mm-hmm. The second half of the season, he's got all these little games that are just going to be real good for him towards the end, especially in the championship game. So just foreshadowing what's going to actually happen. Obviously, you got to get there, but seeking out guys who have an easier schedule is going to benefit you in the long run. If you just take guys and completely ignore the strength of schedule, then you're actually probably going to collapse as a team. So I use strength of schedule when I draft to kind of guide me in that. But.
Yeah, no, I mean, using strength of schedule does help out a lot. It's and like we mentioned with quarterbacks too, like Drew Brees, like there are just some players that just dominate at home.
Yeah.
Sorry, geez.
Wow.
At home and then just struggle on the road.
Right.
It's important to identify those. It's also important to identify. I mean, how many times have we seen a good player that has a bad year? And then after the season's over, everybody's like, well, it was just because they had a tough schedule. Yeah. There's a few people sitting in the back of the room. It's like, yeah, I knew that.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't draft them.
That's why I didn't draft them. Yeah. No. Let's move to number 4, the one you wanted to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
Let's get it, boss.
Speaking of foreshadowing, boys, don't be afraid to draft for a trade.
Boom.
So kind of what I quickly mentioned, where if a guy falls to you and you're like, I don't really like this guy.
Right.
But somebody does. Let's use an example here. We'll bring it up again since we bring it up every single time. Mr. Morgan was sitting in the 3rd round, had Jordan Howard and Christian McCaffrey on the board. He decides to pick Jordan Howard. Now, he didn't like Christian McCaffrey. However, if he decided to pick Christian McCaffrey and still didn't want him on his team, he knew deep down that there was 2 guys that really, really wanted him, and one of them was me. And he could have totally fleeced one of us and sent Christian McCaffrey to that team. Yep. It's something that you should definitely keep in mind when drafting. I'm not saying to do this for all your picks.
No, that would be dumb.
No, obviously not.
Some of them are going to work out, but...
And probably, honestly, I would rather not do it in the first round or even the second, like very early.
The early rounds, yeah.
I mean, but if you're like the 3rd round is when it gets interesting because that's usually this year. I think it's kind of more the 4th round, like late 3rd, 4th. Yeah. When it kind of becomes more open. Like there's a lot of really good players first 2.5, 3 rounds.
Right.
And then it kind of becomes open and very like this guy likes this guy, this person likes this guy. Yeah. Like so that's when I would really start to look at it, the 4th round, where you can draft a guy and someone's sitting right behind you really wants to draft this person that you can right after the draft or even after if he has a good week 1. Yeah. Send him.
I think the biggest thing for me is that, and this is one thing I've learned over the last couple years even, is you really this is one of our better tips. Don't force yourself in a box because you don't like, and this is what we were talking about earlier. Yeah. Don't devalue a player because you don't like him. I don't like Tyreek Hill, and I don't like Michael Thomas. Still don't. Had really good fantasy seasons last year. There's a few teams in our league that really wanted them.
Yeah.
I could have actually made some really decent trades had I drafted them, but I passed on both of them to take a hurt AJ Green. So make sure that whatever you're doing it makes sense for your team. This is also it's a good, drafting for a trade is a really good tip, but I think you could also go as far as saying, don't be afraid, like if a certain guy comes off the board that you liked and you're like, dang it, he took the guy that I wanted.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to go, okay, well, that's not the end of the world. I'll just draft this guy and then I'll see if I can make a trade with somebody else.
Well, that's the thing.
The
People,
roster spot.
you're right. Yeah. A lot of times if the draft's not going your way, like, that's okay.
Yeah.
Just draft somebody
right
that you know somebody else will like. Or even if you don't know.
The draft almost will never go your way.
Right. That's so true.
I don't mean that in the context of like it never
is
goes your
true,
way
though.
and pout.
It's not going to go according to your plan.
Yeah, right. You have to learn to flow with the plan. So
flow with the draft.
Always like, and that's one of the things that I like to do is if there's a guy, like I said, if there's a guy I don't like, I take him anyway.
Yeah.
Especially if there's no one else there. Like if you're like sitting there like, oh my god, who am I going to take here? There's the guy I don't
obviously
like.
If there's somebody that you want that's still there, you take them.
But there's like I don't like Phillip Lindsay this year. But some idiot in our league is going to want Phillip Lindsay. They're going to love
somebody that loves Phillip Lindsay.
100%. So you buy him and then you sell him before he gets bad. So if you start doing that, it makes a lot more sense. Like it helps your team in the long run because it doesn't handcuff you to making a bad decision or drafting a guy too early, right? Because maybe you want this guy, but he's going in the 8th round, but you're in the 6th round. There's no one to draft in the 6th round. So you're like, I'll take the guy that I wanted in the 8th round. Just get him out of the way now. No, take the bad guy, wait till the 8th round, and make the right pick, and then just trade that other thing away. It makes way more sense in the long run.
Agreed.
Let's move to number 5. Number 5, follow the ADP. So many people don't do this. It's actually astounding. I hear there's certain fantasy football experts on Instagram that I won't mention that say that you shouldn't use ADP altogether because it's a lie or a ploy from the experts. So on.
Sounds like Alex Jones.
Yeah, basically the Alex Jones of fantasy football. So I won't mention any names. But anyway, so for me, I follow the ADP. The reason why you have to follow the ADP is because you don't want to. It goes back to one of the ones you mentioned, the 2nd round. Don't target guys, but don't overvalue them. It's similar to that in the context that you have to understand that, okay, I want this guy. His ADP is here. And if I draft him now, it's going to be a round too early. If I wait, and I understand, and this is what using tiers and all these kind of come together as you start figuring things out. But what you do is you have a window open on your computer or you have a little notebook and you write down each and every person, each and every team's name and who they draft. And then you're looking at on Sleeper, you can see the draft board right in front of you as it's going along. Or if you do an offline draft and you got the board on the wall, you can see it as it's going down.
Right.
So you see the run on players. You're like, okay, there's a run on running backs. There's a run on wide receivers. You know what's going to happen. And say you're 6 picks away from this happening. And the 6 teams ahead of you all need a wide receiver. And you don't need another wide receiver. You want to draft that running back. But you don't want to draft that running back yet because there's another guy you want. So you take the guy that you want, and then you wait 6 picks because you know those guys are probably going to take wide receivers. So it's understanding the ADP of where things are going and looking at a guy saying that, okay, he's supposed to go in the 8th round. Don't take him around too early because you're nervous that 6 guys ahead of you are, they're going to take him. Understand that those 6 teams have wide receivers that they got to take, and I'm just going to take my running back around later. And so understand where guys, even before the draft, where guys are going. That's why we'll talk about this in a little bit, but that's why mock drafting is important to understand where the draft is flowing, what guys are going where, but understand the ADP. I think it's one of the most important things to do when you're drafting.
And that kind of goes with understanding guys in your league too. Being like, well, I know this guy loves to draft quarterbacks.
Right.
He loves to draft quarterbacks early. So I know he's probably going to take a quarterback here, which means I'll get this guy here right after him.
Right.
So knowing ADP and knowing guys in your league, I think those two things are very important.
Very, very important.
So, you know what else has kind of been going with what I've been talking about?
Number 6.
Similar to what I said earlier, when you have a guy in mind, right?
Yeah.
You targeted a guy. He didn't go to you. And now you're panicking. Here's the tip. Don't panic. If the draft's not going your way, which we know it probably won't, and your guy just got taken off the board, and your backup plan just got taken off the board, and your plan C just got taken off the board,
yep,
and you're freaking out, so you just draft somebody to draft somebody,
yep,
almost never works out. Listen, if a situation like that happens, it's pretty easy to kind of like just calm down, right? Let's say your 3 guys that you wanted went off the board. You can pick by the highest ADP. You can pick by your team fit. You can pick by picking a guy to trade him, like we talked about. You still have plenty of options, especially if it's early, like first 2 or 3 rounds. Even if your guys got off the board, chances are not all of your guys went off the board. Like there's still plenty of players in those first couple rounds that you can get. And even if it's later in the draft, you still have plenty of options, because chances are later in drafts, like if you go rounds 4, 5, 6, 7, there's guys that are falling. There's guys that are getting more. There's other teams that are getting more desperate. So you always have options in the draft, and just know it's not going to go your way. And when it doesn't, just relax.
I think panicking leads to
making dumb decisions,
which we'll talk about a little bit later. But I think that if you're, this is what creating backup plans is all about. If you go into a draft and you're sitting there and you're like, this is the guy I want, this is the round I'm going to get him, and then that guy comes off the board and you didn't create a backup plan for that, then you're sitting there confused and not knowing what you're going to do. You're like, oh my God, what got to take?
Wait.
And then you're super like you just completely collapse as a fan.
Somebody took Barkley in the first round. I was going to take him 10th overall.
Yeah, it's true. Just stay calm. Like, there's no reason to be in your fantasy league and like freak out at your draft and start drafting, because one bad thing leads to the next and you end up completely collapsing.
Yeah.
So just don't panic. Stick with it. And you know, always have, like, for me, I don't want to try to like every player in the draft. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But try to find the best players that you want, the best players that are available, and always have a backup plan. Always have a plan to be like, okay, well, this guy came off the board. Oh, that guy came off the board. This guy came off the board. Like, I have like 5 backup plans so that I'm not sitting there at the draft freaking out. That one guy that you drafted using tiers and he goes, oh, that should have been my guy. You know he's going to have a bad draft. If it happens in like the 3rd round, you're like, oh, that guy's going to have a bad draft because they're already getting mad that something happened.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you caused that, you're like, okay, this is going well. Right. And you want to be the one in the draft room that's like poised, understanding what you're doing. And if somebody comes off the board, show no reaction. Just be like, all right, whatever.
Put your poker face on.
Like the guy that because if you're in a league and you've been in a league for years, they know the guys you like.
Yeah.
When people draft Christian McCaffrey in our league, they look right at Rick and they're like, yeah, I got him. It's like, talk to me later this week, boss.
We'll be in discussions
later. So let's move on to number 7, which I call mock draft ... a lot.
Oh.
Yep. So some people mock draft 5 minutes before their draft. Or the day of, they go, oh, I got a mock draft, and they do like 1 or 2 mock drafts, and they feel like they're good. The only way to make a mock draft effective is I like to use the automatic ones, like on Sleeper or Fantasy Pros, to kind of get an idea of where the ADP is, and then go into an actual draft room and do it against real people, because real people are unpredictable. They try to do their best to make it unpredictable on the automatic ones. Yeah. Because I find the automatic ones a lot faster and easier to get through than an hour mock draft. Right. But try to do at least when you get to late July, early August, and say your draft is at the end of the preseason, so it's a month earlier. A month earlier, try to every day get on, do a mock draft against real people, and start working through that, because the more and more you mock draft, the more and more you're going to understand like say you already know where you're picking. I'm going pick 2. I practice with pick 2 over and over and over and over and over again. You know what guys you're going to have by the time you get to the draft.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, these 3 players, 4 players might be on the board at this pick. I'm prepared for this, and I can take these guys. The other thing it allows you to do is unremorsefully pick players and work on strategies that may or may not work. So if you want to go with the three-headed monster at running back with the first 3 picks of your draft, try it. See how your wide receivers look. If you end up having a really good team and you do that a couple of times for a really good team, then maybe you can go into your draft room and be like, okay, maybe I draft 3 running backs to start. Or maybe there's certain situations that trigger that. So like, for example, sometimes in my mock drafts with the second pick, Juju Smith-Schuster falls to me. Sometimes he doesn't. So I have a plan if Juju falls to me, and I have a plan if he doesn't. And so it's like you have to understand that certain situations might if you train yourself, this lends to the don't panic thing. If you trained yourself to not panic when certain situations happen because you already know, okay, I've experienced Travis Kelce coming off the board right before me, and I wanted to draft him, so I know what to do with which is not something I'll never experience, but I understand what I need to do with that pick now.
Right.
You know, like if Juju does come off the board before me at 2 or at 209, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm going, oh my God, that was the guy I want. I'm not doing that. I'm going, okay, well, my mock draft 5 days ago, Juju went off the board and I had this kind of draft. So this is the draft I want to go for. And understanding the system behind what you're going to do. When I mock draft, I have like 6 different teams in my head, 6, 7, 8 different teams in my head based on how things fall, because everything's going to get weird. If Travis, like I'm at 2, not to ramble on, but I'm in the second round, pick 209, Travis Kelce's going in the second round. If Travis Kelce falls to 210, that is right around where his ADP is, and chances are the team right in front of me is going to pick. He picks twice because he's the turn pick.
Right.
So chances are he's going to pick Travis Kelce. And if Travis Kelce falls to me, I'll pass on Travis Kelce, let him take it, and wait on a player that I wanted to get. So it's all about creating strategy.
And that, I mean, it does help you out a lot. I mean, mock drafting not only helps you out, but it's also fun. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it's when you want to draft, just go do that.
Yeah, you have a sudden urge to draft, which we all do. Let's be honest.
Don't join
it's about to be
league.
July. Do not join do not
join your 25th league.
Yeah, in your 6 different website. Yeah. Just do your mock draft. It'll help
Honey,
you out.
How much money did you spend on buy-ins? $10,000.
Let's just say we don't have our Subaru anymore.
I bought in with my Subi.
By the way, yeah, we might have to sell the house.
Go ahead, boss.
All right. So what are we at now? Number 8. Holy cow, dude. We're flying. All right. Number 8 for me, for the both of us. Stay open-minded. For this one, for drafts, it's kind of plays into the theme that we've had of staying calm, like having strategies, staying open-minded. I think you should always be prepared for different things too. Yeah. And always have different like strategies and kind of go with the flow of the draft. I think you kind of brought that up earlier, of like playing to the strategies of the draft. You know, if you're picking at where I am, so since we used you as an example, we'll use me as an example. I'm picking at 10. I know there's going to be a lot of different things that can happen for me. Yeah. And there could be a lot of different outcomes. I'm going to stay open-minded on every possibility. Mm-hmm. I could go 2 running backs there. I could go receiver, running back. I mean, I probably won't, but I could go 2 receivers there too. Right. Like, there's a whole bunch of different things I could do. Yeah. You got to keep that in mind, especially if you're picking at 10, you're picking at 1 or 2, you're picking at kind of those picks where you get 1 or 2 guys, and then you got to wait a whole few rounds because a lot of things can change. And as you said, drafts are super unpredictable when you're drafting against other people. So you got to stay open-minded. You got to have good strategies, and you got to have a lot of strategies. But most importantly, just like be relaxed.
I've gone into so many drafts closed-minded on what I wanted to do.
Yeah, you're like, okay, I'm getting
Jordan Howard, Carson Wentz.
I wasn't gonna say it, but
Ezekiel Elliott. Let's go. That's my team.
Right.
Losing the second round of the playoffs.
You're like, well, so people always have their guys. So let's be like, well, I know I'm gonna get Melvin Gordon in the first round. I want Philip Lindsay on my team. I want Julio Jones on my team. And like when those things don't happen, you just like, what's going on?
What is happening? This is not the team I wanted.
But you got to stay open-minded in drafts.
Have an idea of what your team might look like, but go into it saying, you know what, I have my draft sheet. And
I could have a whole different combinations of guys.
Right, and
it doesn't matter.
The more relaxed you are, the better you draft. I think that's kind of the thing that I've realized over the years is that if you're sitting there going, oh, dang it, that's the guy I wanted, and then you're getting all stressed out and your face is red, the draft room, and everyone's like, what's wrong?
That was kind of me last year, I'm not going to lie. After McCaffrey almost fell to me, and I got stuck with Jarrett McKinnon.
You shouldn't even have drafted McKinnon, boss.
I know. Well, I needed a running back at that point.
But there's the perfect scenario of going back to like number 6, panicking.
Yeah.
You thought you were hoping that McCaffrey fell to you, but you were.
I didn't really have a plan for the third round either. I actually, you know what my plan was Jordan Howard.
Yeah.
Because I also like Jordan Howard too. I did not think in any way possible McCaffrey would fall to me, and then he almost did. And when that was happening, I was like, oh, McCaffrey. And then he got picked, and I was like, well, what do I do now? You know?
Yeah. So that's what, like, just in your draft, stay open-minded, stick with it, and and just be relaxed. Number 9, don't draft stupid. I was talking about this earlier.
What facts?
He dropping mad facts on these people. They're gonna be like, what?
Dude,
I can't. This is the most astounding.
Like, can you give me a fantasy
Write
tip?
That down. Don't draft stupid.
Yeah, it's like, can you give me a fantasy tip? I really want. Okay, man, here's a tip. Don't draft stupid.
Don't draft stupid. All right, so here's what I mean by don't draft stupid. This lends to everything that we've been talking against. Don't panic. You're panicking. You're freaking out. You're not staying open-minded. You didn't get the team that you wanted. You're not you're the guys you targeted you're overvaluing them and you're picking badly. So the guy comes, you're sitting in the draft room and the guy comes off, the guy you want comes off the board.
Yeah.
And you go, oh no, we've all done this. I'm not even like everyone.
We just set an example of me doing it.
And you're sitting there and you're like, wow. Okay, that guy just came off the board, and then you're like, "Oh, I didn't have a backup plan. I didn't do enough mock drafts for this. What's on my list?" And your hands start shaking, your palms start sweating, the clock's ticking down.
Your knees weak, arms are heavy. You're nervous.
Did you just drop Eminem lyrics on me? Then you make a stupid draft pick. Mm-hmm. Then you make another stupid draft pick. And then you make another stupid
T.Y.
draft
Hilton.
pick.
Actually, he was okay.
And so you just keep...
Alshon Jeffrey.
What happens is the second you panic and you make one stupid draft pick,
yep,
it usually leads to 2 or 3 more stupid draft picks.
It starts rolling down the hill.
It starts rolling down the hill. And then at the end of the draft, you're talking to me trying to convince yourself that this is a good team, and it really isn't. And that doesn't mean that if you do draft badly, you can't fix it. Mm-hmm. The man's across from me had a pretty bad draft and won the championship.
I mean, I did draft Mahomes, bro, and Barkley, and Sony Michel.
That's very true.
But no, overall, my team. And Julio. I'm not meaning to flex my team. But he's like, no, I didn't draft. I really didn't. I had like a very average draft.
Yeah, right. But if you let certain things affect you and you panic, it's gonna end up leading to stupid picks, and then it's gonna that stupid pick will run down to another stupid pick. This is what I'm talking about. If
my middle rounds were awful.
If you get
right as you said, my third round pick was bad, and
those are the rounds
3 to like 6 or 7. I was awful.
Yeah, those are the rounds you need to be dominating.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just like it sounds so simple to say don't draft stupid because a lot of people be like, oh, I won't make any stupid draft picks. But you get into the draft room and things just change. You know what I mean? Like you start, everything gets everyone's like trying to laugh and joke around.
Is starting to
it's like getting through your hands and the guy who put up the wrong sticker on the draft board and you're trying to peel it off. I didn't draft Saquon. Oh, I mean, I can't draft Saquon.
Everybody's laughing at you now.
Yeah, and you're panicking. You're like, oh my God.
Starting to get nervous.
It's down to 10 seconds and you got to make a decision. Don't draft stupid.
Yeah, pretty
Go
much.
ahead, Rick. Give us the last one.
All right,
number
last
10.
one. It's kind of like draft for upside at the end of the draft. If you're picking, you've already you've got your team, you've got most of your bench at this point. You're kind of looking for guys that, in my opinion, at this point in the draft, you should be looking for guys with breakout potential, guys that can be like RB2s, RB1s. Not trying to brag or flex, but last year. My thing was, and my strategy is always draft a quarterback later in the draft. Draft a quarterback is going to be good, and then right after that, go for someone with upside, or even vice versa if you want to go the other direction. And last year, the guy was Mahomes, and I took him, and things worked out. It's not always going to work out like that, obviously. This year, there's guys like Josh Allen that you should be looking at. Yeah, Lamar Jackson, like guys with great breakout potential that you can get in like rounds like 13, 12 that
you can keep that Lamar Jackson they don't have yourself.
Yeah, wow. I will, boss. Don't you worry. But it doesn't even have to be quarterback. You could look for breakout running backs, breakout wide receivers.
Well, I think this is the hard part about this past year for drafts, for the NFL draft at least, is that there wasn't any big running backs with large opportunity besides Josh Jacobs and David Montgomery. And right now, people are overhyping those guys quite a bit. Josh Jacobs is a 4th-round pick. David Montgomery is a 5th-round pick. So what I usually like to do is after I get my team established, rounds 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? You got your established team. You got your main starters. You move into 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's where I start. Those 5 picks is where I start drafting for upside, and I draft for value, and I draft for those situations. And so what I look for is usually a younger guy who has breakout potential and has the upside to do something really good. This is where if David Montgomery starts falling back down the board, this is where I draft a guy like David Montgomery. This is where I'm drafting guys like Tyler Boyd, Christian Kirk, Dante Pettis. I'm listing all wide receivers. One of the guys I really like right now is Kenyon Drake. So, like, you start drafting guys like that, guys that will be potential breakouts, potential really good players on your team, but won't damage anything because they're sitting on your bench.
Exactly.
So that's what you want to do is draft for upside in that spot. And I think that if you do well with the middle rounds, it really will help your team. Like one of the things last year, like I mentioned, I drafted Carson Wentz, which I'll never do again. And no, I'll probably draft Carson Wentz again someday. But
you will.
maybe even this year. But because I always love my Carson Wentz. But see, now I started talking about Carson Wentz, and it was
all your brain can think about is Carson Wentz.
Joe Mixon. I should have taken Joe Mixon in that spot in the 6th round. Had I taken Joe Mixon, there's a number of things I could have done with that. And I could have gone and traded him away for a high-end wide receiver. I could have gone and traded him away for a better running back. I could have kept him on my team.
Could change your draft, too. Right. And at that point, you're going for like backups, and you can kind of play around with it. Exactly.
And so it's like you draft the right guys in the right positions, and it ends up working out. So there's a lot of different variables that you can add into that, but I think drafting for upside in the mid rounds is really important, and drafting for I mean even like the late rounds. After you get past your top 5, try to draft for value and upside, and once you get to the end of the draft, you're going to be looking at your team going, okay, like literally every time I draft, and I do I rate it on Fantasy Pros, I get an A+ for my bench like every single time because I'm good at drafting benches, I guess. Like I get 3rd place in starters, and then it's like benches are like, boom, you're the best. And I was like, all right. But if you do that,
story of my life.
No, it makes your team drafting well in the mid to late rounds allows you to do a lot of things during the season, because then you can make trades. Then you can do, like, if you draft badly, like really bad, like you last year were like, oh, I'm gonna get LaShawn McCoy in the 6th round, and you nailed that pick. Good job, boss.
Dude,
but you start drafting. This is why, and I don't like drafting.
I drafted Jimmy Graham in the 5th round.
Yeah, I don't like drafting older guys in those mid rounds anymore, because if you start drafting the old guys in the mid rounds, it's like, how are those guys? Some moron's gonna draft Frank Gore in like the 12th round. I know it.
Oh, for sure.
I know it. So I mean, for me, it's just draft for youth and upside. Youth and upside.
Yeah, someone's gonna draft Demaryius Thomas. There's always people that are just gonna.
Oh, he's a Patriot. Wow, I'm gonna go grab him.
Yeah,
and then they get all.
There's always that one random veteran that people will draft wicked early for no reason.
Absolutely no friggin' reason. Yeah, that'll do it for our draft tips. Wow. Our second tip show of existence.
There you go. You might
So
want
now you
to
got two. You
play
know,
this one back in a month.
Bookmark both of them. Play them back in a month. Be sure to listen next week as we move into our players that were forgotten in the 2018 season. Every year, you end the season, and then there are certain things that happen during the season that you just completely forgot happened.
And there is a few month gap between seasons, so
it's pretty
7, easy to forget.
Months. So you completely forget about certain things that happened. We'll remind you some of those things and give you our forgotten players at running back, quarterback, wide receiver, and tight end over the next 2 weeks. Should be an interesting set of episodes. You got any closing thoughts for us, boss?
Yeah, the real tip is to draft Garoppolo, Mahomes, and McCaffrey. If you don't draft all three of those guys, you're losing your league.
See you later, Fantasy Champs.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.